In the sprawling taiga forests of Canada's Northwest Territories, spring arrives with a dramatic thaw, transforming frozen muskeg into a quagmire of melting ice and mud. Temperatures here can swing wildly from frigid nights to surprisingly warm afternoons, testing the resilience of both wildlife and researchers alike. This remote wilderness is home to formidable grey wolf packs, elusive black bears, and towering North American moose, all navigating the treacherous, swampy terrain. It's a landscape as breathtaking as it is perilous, where every step can sink you into hidden ground. Amidst this raw environment, Sarah Johnson, a 29-year-old zoologist with Wildlife Plus, dedicates her career to studying the migration patterns and population dynamics of these large mammals. Her fieldwork sheds critical light on how these iconic species adapt to one of the planet's most extreme and ever-shifting habitats. Every expedition brings discoveries and insights for preserving this northern ecosystem in a warming world. On May 15, 2024, the field team embarked on a series of critical tasks to monitor wildlife along the moose migration corridor in the Northwest Territories. Early in the morning, researchers strategically placed camera traps at predetermined locations, ensuring each device was properly positioned and functioning. Throughout the day, team members inspected existing cameras, downloaded captured images, and meticulously recorded each trap's GPS coordinates. Concurrently, they collected fresh moose scat samples for DNA analysis, labeling and storing specimens to maintain sample integrity. Between camera checks and sample collection, the team conducted systematic surveys to estimate the density of grey wolf packs, recording sightings, tracks, and howling responses. As dusk approached, attention shifted to establishing a secure helicopter landing zone, clearing brush, leveling the ground, and marking perimeters for safe aerial access. By the end of the day, the operation prepared for the next phase of data retrieval, ensuring that both field equipment and landing site met safety standards. The day's work provided invaluable insights into large mammal movements and set the stage for conservation efforts. Equipped for both precision tracking and self-defense, the team relies on a handheld GPS receiver and satellite radio to maintain constant communication and pinpoint their location deep in the taiga. Each member carries a sturdy dagger for close quarters tasks and a compact 9mm hunting pistol for emergencies. To guard against bloodthirsty ticks, they wear lightweight, insect-repellent body armor that balances protection with agility. Beyond gear, their survival hinges on finely honed field skills, interpreting subtle prints and droppings to anticipate animal movements, and moving with the silence of a stalking predator to avoid startling wildlife. When threatened, they can feign death, collapsing and remaining motionless to trick a would-be attacker into losing interest. In remote zones where help may be hours away, every team member is trained to perform advanced first aid on severe wounds, stabilizing injuries long enough to reach evacuation. Together, these tools and talents form a seamless blend of technology and instinct, enabling biologists and trackers to operate safely and effectively in one of the planet's most unforgiving environments. While Sarah was trimming the tall reed grass to widen the helicopter's landing zone, she sensed something amiss just beyond the clearing. A pack of 8 grey wolves had crept silently to within 12 meters, their eyes fixed on her like living shadows. Heart-pounding, Sarah raised her 9mm pistol and fired a warning shot into the air. But one bullet struck a wolf in the shoulder, slowing it only momentarily. Undeterred, the pack surged forward in a coordinated rush. With adrenaline surging, Sarah stashed her radio, drew her dagger, and sprinted toward the nearest sturdy aspen. Pressing her back against the rough bark, she slashed defensively at any wolf daring to close in. At the same time, she activated her satellite radio's emergency beacon, broadcasting her GPS coordinates and alerting the base camp to her dire situation. The wolves circled, testing her resolve until distant rotor blades heralded the helicopter's arrival. Sarah's quick thinking, combined with her training and gear, turned a potentially fatal encounter into a testament to her resourcefulness under fire. After 10 minutes of retreat into denser undergrowth, Sarah knelt to apply a makeshift bandage to the deep gash on her calf. Her hands trembled with pain and exhaustion when a lone alpha wolf suddenly emerged from the shadows, its steady gaze locking onto her location. Adrenaline surged as Sarah raised her pistol and fired 2 deliberate shots. Both rounds rang out against bark and rock, narrowly missing the wolf's imposing form. The animal snarled and took a tentative step forward. Sarah knew she couldn't outrun its speed. Trusting her survival training, she let herself collapse into the dry leaf-strewn forest floor and lay perfectly still, feigning death. Every breath felt like an eternity as the alpha wolf circled closer, sniffing the air inches from her face. Then, satisfied the prey posed no further threat, it turned away and disappeared into the taiga gloom. Sarah waited a full minute before rising, heart pounding but relieved. Her quick instincts and willingness to play dead had truly saved her life once more. After 25 tense minutes, Sarah's SOS beacon guided the rescue helicopter to her location. The pilot landed on a small clearing nearby, where the flight medic sprinted across the muskeg to her side. Assessing her injuries, the medic cleaned and dressed the wolf bite on Sarah's cuff, applying pressure bandages to control bleeding. With Sarah stabilized, intravenous fluids were administered to counteract shock. The medic also secured a pulse oximeter and monitored her oxygen saturation during the flight. Vital signs monitored continuously. The medic confirmed she was stable enough for transport. Minutes later, the helicopter lifted off, carrying Sarah toward Yellowknife. In flight, the medic maintained contact with the territorial hospital, relaying Sarah's condition and estimated arrival time. Sarah, though exhausted and in pain, managed a nod as her vitals were updated. Upon landing at the hospital's helipad, a ground ambulance transferred Sarah directly to the emergency ward, where CT scans and reconstructive specialists stood ready. The rescue underscored the Northwest Territory's commitment to safeguarding researchers in its wildest reaches. From this harrowing experience, several critical lessons emerge. First, carrying both firearms and mastery of the playing dead tactic proved essential when facing a wolf pack. Warning shots only have a limited deterrent effect and cannot be wholly relied upon. Second, robust wilderness first aid preparedness is vital. A well-stocked kit should include pressure wraps, temporary suture tools, and broad-spectrum antibiotics to manage deep wounds long before evacuation arrives. Third, maintaining a safe standoff distance and constant communication with the support team can make the difference between life and death in remote terrain. Ultimately, the balance of defensive gear, medical readiness, and reliable contact protocols forms the core of safe field operations, especially in landscapes where human presence is dwarfed by raw nature and danger lurks just beyond the next tree line. Field teams should regularly drill these emergency procedures and review communication protocols to stay sharp. In July 2021, Rachel Morgan, her husband Daniel, and their 2 children, 9-year-old Leo and 2-year-old Ivy, left their home in Nelson, New Zealand for a remote cabin deep in Fiordland National Park. Their destination was a quiet, isolated wooden cabin on the shores of Lake Te Arai, owned by Rachel's father. It wasn't a vacation in the traditional sense. This was a deliberate escape from the noise, pressure, and distractions of modern life, a chance to slow down, reconnect as a family, and find clarity in nature's solitude. Nestled among towering mountains and ancient forests, the cabin offered no internet, no cell service, and no neighbors for miles. What it did offer was something harder to find space to breathe. For the Morgans, this move wasn't just about scenery, it was about resetting their daily rhythm. As the world outside continued to spin with uncertainty, especially in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic, Rachel and Danielle saw this as a rare opportunity to unplug and live simply, if only for a little while. The cabin sat in one of the most remote and untamed parts of Fiordland National Park, a wild stretch of land where dense forests, rugged mountains, and deep lakes created a haven for wildlife. Among the most notable inhabitants of the area were grizzly bears. Normally elusive and wary of humans, these bears had started showing up more frequently and behaving more boldly than usual. The reason for this shift traced back to the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. With travel restrictions, lockdowns, and reduced activity across the country, hunting had been heavily limited or temporarily suspended. As a result, the natural balance in the area shifted. Without the usual human presence to keep them in check, grizzlies grew less fearful. They began to roam closer to cabins, trails, and other areas once considered safe. Sightings became more common, so did close encounters. For Rachel and her family, this new reality added an unexpected layer of tension to their retreat. What began as a peaceful escape into nature now included the challenge of living alongside powerful, unpredictable wildlife. While the wilderness offered beauty, stillness, and space to reconnect, it also demanded respect and caution. The lines between safety and danger were thinner than they had imagined, and every rustle in the woods became something to pay attention to. Living in the wild wasn't just romantic isolation, it was real raw and at times risky. Life at the cabin wasn't a blind leap into the unknown for Rachel and her family. Both she and Daniel were familiar with the realities of living in the wilderness. They had spent time in remote areas before and understood the precautions needed to stay safe, especially in a region known for its wildlife. They taught their children how to move carefully through the woods, stay alert, and respect the animals that shared their space. Daniel took the threat of grizzly bears seriously. Every time he left the cabin, whether to gather firewood, go on a walk, or explore the area, he carried a canister of bear spray strapped to his belt. In more isolated stretches of the forest, he also brought a firearm, not out of aggression but out of caution. It wasn't about confrontation, it was about being ready if the unexpected happened. The goal was always to avoid encounters, not provoke them. The family took simple but consistent safety steps. They kept food stored securely, cleaned up thoroughly after meals, and avoided wandering too far from marked trails or sight lines. Even young Leo learned how to recognize signs of animal activity and what to do if they saw a bear. Living in the cabin was peaceful, but it came with a constant awareness of their surroundings. For the Morgans, safety wasn't about fear, it was about preparation, respect for nature, and knowing how to live responsibly in the wild. One afternoon, while trying to get a phone signal to call her father, Rachel stepped away from the cabin and climbed a small rise where reception was sometimes better. The signal was weak, so she asked her son Leo to run back inside and grab the external antenna they used to boost their phones. It was a routine task, one they had done before without trouble. But this time, something went terribly wrong. As Rachel stood waiting, a large grizzly bear suddenly charged out of the trees behind her. It came without warning, fast and silent. In seconds, the bear was on her. The attack was brutal and left no time to react. Rachel screamed, and Danielle, hearing the commotion from inside the cabin, grabbed both the bear spray and his rifle and ran toward the noise. When he reached the scene, he used the spray first to try and drive the bear off. When that didn't stop the animal, he fired. The shot hit its mark, and the bear was killed, but it was already too late. Rachel had suffered fatal injuries in the initial seconds of the attack. The moment was devastating, sudden, violent, and irreversible. Despite all their experience and precautions, the wild had shown just how unpredictable and dangerous it could be. What had started as a peaceful day ended in tragedy, marking a painful turning point for the Morgan family in their time at the cabin. Following the attack, park officials and wildlife experts launched an investigation to understand what had triggered such a deadly encounter. The grizzly bear was examined thoroughly. It showed no signs of starvation, illness, or injury conditions that sometimes make wild animals more aggressive. It hadn't been provoked or cornered. The attack was unprovoked and by all accounts unexpected. Experts describe the bear's behavior as abnormal. Grizzlies are powerful and territorial, but they don't typically attack humans without cause. In this case, there were no clear warning signs or explanations. The conclusion was deeply unsettling. The attack was a rare, unpredictable event, something that could not have been reasonably anticipated or prevented even by experienced wilderness dwellers like the Morgans. Officials also noted that this was the first fatal bear attack in the area in more than 40 years. Fiordland National Park, despite its wild nature, had long been considered relatively safe for those who respected its boundaries. The tragedy served as a stark reminder that no amount of knowledge or preparation can completely eliminate risk when living alongside powerful wildlife. Nature is beautiful, but it's also wild and sometimes dangerously unpredictable. In the years since Rachel's death, her father has continued to visit the cabin with Leo and Ivy. For him, the place is more than just a remote retreat, it's a part of Rachel's story, a space filled with memories of her laughter, her strength, and the love she poured into her family. He brings the children there not to relive the tragedy, but to honor their mother's spirit and keep her memory alive in the place she loved most. At the cabin, they hike the trails Rachel once walked, sit by the lake she adored, and share stories about her life. The visits have become a quiet ritual, both healing and meaningful. Though the loss was sudden and heartbreaking, the cabin now serves as a link between past and present, helping the children grow up with a sense of who their mother was and the values she lived by. Rachel's story is a powerful reminder that life in nature offers both beauty and risk. But even in the face of tragedy, love and memory endure. By returning to the cabin, Rachel's family chooses to carry forward her legacy, not in fear, but in strength, resilience, and the deep bond they still share.